Douglas Thompson and Deborah Rocha. So before we dive into the content, I will just give a few words to Douglas to introduce the agenda very shortly and to introduce Barbara and himself. Thanks, Douglas.
Thank you so much, Christina, and thank you to BIC Africa for inviting me here today to provide this interesting session. Thank you all also to all the participants. I know some of you might be coming in later or having to move around. We certainly appreciate your time. We know how busy it is at the beginning of the year. So we really appreciate your time to participate in today's meeting. As Christina said, it's focused on mobilizing Diaspora. Let's just see the objectives of what we're wanting to do today. So the idea is to help business incubator managers to more effectively engage and leverage Diaspora communities, with a main focus on Europe and the US. But of course, the ideas and the concepts can be expanded to any region of the world, with the aim to enhance their incubators and clients. So it's how to identify, how to create, how to use, how to leverage Diaspora in your activities. I hope that's as you are planning. So the idea is to focus on fostering collaborations between Diaspora networks, either those already created or those to be created, and local entrepreneurship ecosystems. Really, in today's sessions, we wanted to provide an introduction to mobilizing Diaspora, sort of a guideline, an overview, the concepts, and the activities. Obviously, highlighting certain aspects, but I think also very importantly to provide the relevant material, which you can go and look at afterwards, the relevant websites, the relevant reports, etc. And with the idea to encourage discussion and encourage exchange of experience within this this session. So within the session, we're very much wanting to encourage exchange, discussion, and exchange of experiences. To help that, we've given examples and links which we will show throughout this session, and to drive the exchange. Obviously, we'll look at some of those during today's session, and the others you've got as access to. So you can see it afterwards. Just let me go through the agenda then. So we have three parts: part A, part B, or three main parts: part A, part B, part C. The idea is we have just under 3 hours. We'll have a 20-minute break in the middle of the session, after an hour and a quarter or so, an hour and 20 minutes or so, and we'll put that break in the position where it most effectively it originates. We'll have a short introduction to BIC Africa, and of course it's Christina who will do that. Then part A focuses on the role and mapping of Diasporas, understanding the role, how to map, and we'll have an example of a mapping of Diaspora, actually from Ethiopia, where many of the participants are located today. And then looking at specific contributions of Diaspora to business incubators. Then we'll look at strategies for effective engagement. First of all, looking at challenges, and then focusing on how to build connections and examples of how certain organizations have created events, created targeted programs, leveraged technologies and communication. And then in part C, we'll have sustainable partnerships, where we'll look at structuring of any types of agreements. And I think very importantly, we'll finalize on all the platforms and other resources that are available. We'll show them, we'll give you examples of them, which you may or may not have seen before. Like, as I say, the idea is this is an introduction, but we create an area in which we can have open discussion. To do that, we also have a number of questions by Slido, which will show you the QR codes, and there's a link if you want to do it on your computer. Most of those questions are open-ended, asking for opinions and understanding and experience that you've done. One or two of them are closed-ended, but really most of them are open-ended as a means to encourage discussion. Just who we are. Thank you, Christina, for the brief introduction. My name is Douglas. I'm the manager of the international area at SBI, which is a Portuguese-based international consultancy with many years of experience in international projects for all different types of organizations. So I control the international strategy at SBI. I'm an economist by background, who then moved into innovation and development and incubation. Worked with EBN and BIC Africa many times before, and so really looking forward to this session. I'm really looking forward to this session. I'm joined by my colleague Barbara Rocha. Barbara is more focused on communication consultancy. If you were at the first session just before Christmas in December, she was one of the main speakers there. She's an expert in digital marketing and social media management, etc., which I think is a key aspect of mobilizing Diasporas. So we're very happy to have her with us here today as well. Again, before we start and before we go into the introduction of what is of what is BIC Africa in general, I really want to say thank you for being here. I really would like to try to make sure that we try to have the biggest exchange of possible. So any questions, please ask them in the chat, and Barbara and myself will monitor them. If you have anything you particularly want to say, then put your hand up, and of course in the chat, and of course we can cater for that. As I think we can cater for that as well within the group of this size. So perhaps we could start then just with this. Before the introduction, perhaps we could just ask, what kind of experience do you have in developing and mobilizing diaspora networks? You can see on the screen, you should have a QR code, and there's also a link beneath it. So please feel free to use it on your phones or on your computers. We really would like for you to answer these questions if you do have time, if you do have the ability. Because it really helps us to define what we want to do in the session, and indeed future sessions as well. So maybe if I leave that on the screen for a while, I think yes, we've put the link there. There is no shared screen. Okay.
Can you see now?
Yes, we can see now. There you go.
Thank you.
And maybe we'll give you a bit more time for this first poll, Barbara, so that people get used to linking to the Slidos.
Okay.
We have one participant, is it Olayemi, who says he cannot hear. I believe that's just related perhaps to yourself. I think everyone else can hear.
Yeah, I think so. Please, if you cannot hear, then let us know in the chat. But indeed, Olayemi, maybe just make sure that everything's connected well on your side. Thank you.
Okay. Maybe just 30 more seconds, yes, or so for people to add.
Okay, great.
But I think we can see results, but actually, and I think this is very interesting indeed. Of course, we've got just under half the people who've got either some or a lot of experience. I mean, this is almost a really good group then, or going down to maybe, as we move forward, about half, 2/3, who've got half, a third who've got either some or a significant level of experience. And we really would like to hear from you as we go through the conversation then for your experience. And about half who don't have experience in developing diaspora networks, which I think that's a very good group for today. So I think we've pitched a session quite right. We've got some introduction ideas, but we've also got some ways in which we really want to get your opinions and get your experiences as well. So thank you so much for that. I think given that, maybe if I then put my screen back, just let me give a second. So you should be able to see my screen again, I believe.
Yes.
Yes, Douglas.
Okay, that's fantastic. So what I'll do now then, thank you for answering that question. And as I said, we really hope that we can use these Slido experiences as we go through today. But if I could hand back to Christina for an introduction to BIC Africa in general.
Yes, Douglas, thank you so much. Thanks for the introduction and for presenting yourselves. And once again, thanks a lot for being here today, to you and to Barbara. We're looking forward very much. All right, so before we dive into the content, I'll just make a quick introduction to the BIC Africa project. Probably most of you are already familiar with it, but maybe we have some newcomers who have never heard of it or are hearing about it for the first time. So just to give you a nutshell, an idea about what this project is about. So to start with, as I said before, Robert and myself, we represent EBN, the European Business and Innovation Center Network. So this is an organization based in Brussels, in Belgium, and actually it was founded in 1985. And itself as well, it started actually as a European Commission funded pilot project with a mission to really create a network in Europe of business innovation centers and business incubators, specifically focusing on supporting actually innovative entrepreneurs. So the aim was to create an ecosystem, really a network of organizations with shared vision and shared goals. So today, actually, we offer a wide range of technical business support services and also quality assessment and certification products. So actually, what we do is we certify our members, EBN members, which are incubators, and we provide them with a label to serve as a sort of a proof to their client companies, to entrepreneurs, that actually the services that are provided are of high quality, and that they can go to these incubators with confidence and be assured that they will receive high value services and support. So our certified EU BIC, so indeed they provide a complex spectrum of entrepreneurial innovation support. So this includes incubation, acceleration, internationalization, access to funding, and so on. Next slide, please, Douglas. Right, so BIC Africa is actually a part of the EU program support to entrepreneurship and MSME creation. So there are 5 separate country projects, as you can see, one in Angola, Comoros, Ethiopia, Madagascar, and Somalia. And their respective goals is to establish and consolidate business incubators in each of these countries, leading to decent job creation and sustainable livelihoods. So the goal is the same, but each of the projects are a little bit different in their specific contents and are actually led by different implementing partners. So in Angola, it is IFC, which is part of the World Bank, that implements the project. In Comoros, Madagascar, and Somalia, it's UNIDO, and in Ethiopia, it's a German consultancy company, SEQUA. So on top of these 5 individual projects, BIC Africa is a regional network that provides capacity building and networking support, and also providing software networking services to the whole wider incubation ecosystem in the region. So what we do is we interconnect these 5 separate country projects, and our aim is really to create a network, a wider network in the whole region, and to create synergies. Next slide, please. Okay, so just in a nutshell, so our direct beneficiaries are business incubators. So in our project, we work directly with incubators and incubator managers, but the final beneficiaries are entrepreneurs, SMEs, and startups. So the end goal, of course, is to support in each country the client companies, and along the journey we work with a number of various stakeholders, policymakers, business angels, universities, EU delegation, who are of course all part of this process of really creating and setting up a network. Next slide, please. Right, and to give you an idea of the type of service offer that we provide for business incubators, so we have various capacity building and skill development services. So the virtual training center, which which today's session is part of this, let's say, skill development program. Besides the virtual trainings, we also had on-site trainings. So we had 5 national boot camps. These are usually 2-3 day capacity building trainings for incubator managers. So in each country, we had a separate live training and also 2 African boot camps. So on those occasions, we actually gather business incubator managers from the incubators we're working with in each country. We gather them together, and again, we provide capacity building services through our various experts that are part of our network in Europe and beyond Europe. So secondly, we also make a better connection between European and African innovation hubs. So we have services such as soft landing, whereby business incubator managers from Africa are hosted by incubators in Europe for a few days or about a week's time, which really enables them to learn from each other, to see how incubators run in a different part of the world, to share best practices, and yeah, also it's an occasion to establish collaboration for the longer term. And a similar type of service, but within Africa. So this is our staff exchange program. Again, we had, for example, the first edition of this, whereby incubator managers from Comoros went to Madagascar for a few days to again learn about their peers, organizations, and exchange with each other. Then we have what we call the BIC Africa certification program. So this is based on what I mentioned before, the EBN quality assessment. So hereby we establish, let's say, a system to assess the incubator's quality, with the aim to later on possibly certify them and to benchmark them. Finally, we have also support regarding exchanges and cooperation. So we have webinars focusing on connection with diaspora. So this is more targeted at entrepreneurs, actually, in the 5 target countries we're working in. So our goal is to connect them with successful entrepreneurs from the diaspora who are in Europe or in the US or in other parts of the world, who can eventually potentially also become their mentors, or from who they can learn from, and whose success stories they can see. So as mentioned before, indeed, most of our services are targeted at business incubators. We really work directly with business incubators. There are some other cases, like our acceleration program for female entrepreneurs, which is also a yearly program running for 2-3 months, where we target specifically established female entrepreneurs, and yeah, we aim to enhance again their various skills, and to enable them to grow their business. So please feel free to follow us on our social media to learn more about our different services. We post all the time about the upcoming opportunities, but I think that's just to give you an overview really of the different things that we do. And so Douglas, I think that with that, I'm happy to hand back over to you to really start today's session.
Thanks so much, Christina. And yes, certainly from my side, looking into BIC Africa from a slightly different perspective position, I would advise everyone, all the participants, everyone to go to the website if they haven't before, look at the social media. That was a very nice 5-minute introduction, Christina, but if you introduced everything which BIC Africa does, I'm sure it would take half an hour or an hour, and we just don't have enough time. So please, I'd advise people go to the website, look at the news, look at the events, look at the connect to the social media. There's really a lot of activities going on via BIC Africa. Okay, so as we said, again, I'm going to make the point of please do put questions and etc. in the chat, so to encourage discussion. We wanted to split today into 3 parts, and part A being the role and mapping of Diasporas. Part A itself then has 3 subparts. Part A1 being, let's start off with understanding the role of Diasporas. So, as I think many of you know, the Diaspora can play a crucial role in supporting entrepreneurship and development in all elements through contributing financial, intellectual, social capital, etc. We're trying today to focus a little bit more on Diasporas in Europe and the US, but of course that's just a choice for today. But they really do act as a bridge between the countries of origin and the global economy, helps foster innovation, helps create investment, knowledge transfer, capacity building is a very much a element of that as well. Increasing export readiness is something which we'll come back to again and again and again in this sense. Of course, there are challenges. Of course, governments and states and incubators and the ecosystem has to create enabling environments to do this. Development organizations has a role in this as well. But there are really a lot of very good examples, and we hope to go over them today, or showing the platforms, etc., where Diasporas have supported innovation, job creation, sustainable development, all the aspects which of course business incubators and business incubators, as many business incubator managers as many of you are, really can link into to help both the business of the business of your incubator, and of course help your clients, your startups, your entrepreneurs. So that's the role, and that's really the concept. That's really the concept of today. We wanted to start that off by the first introductory example, which is actually a feasibility study. A feasibility study that has ended just last month. We link to the information there, which you can see this one we got out of Chat GPT. That there's a link to the information there. That of the African Diaspora Global Marketplace. It's a project and implemented also by the International Centre of Migration Policy Development. And what we have there is this: they're going to get a feasibility study of how platforms can be developed. So let's look at what their motivation is first. So the first is that the Diaspora's role is to contribute to the development of their countries of origin and gaining increased, albeit insufficient, recognition. So this is the background of the report. So doing development has grown, and Diaspora is seen as increasingly important, but not necessarily seen as significant social investors by governments, by the private sector, or indeed the Diasporas themselves. And so what this feasibility study is doing is looking at seeing, is there an opportunity here to harness and seek further support from Diaspora investments, especially when regarding the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. And that's their context in which they developed a study to determine the feasibility of an African Diaspora global marketplace within the context of their migration and mobility program, and under the auspices of a wider EU funded migration and mobility support program. So the study aimed to explore and identify optimal ways to implement a marketplace that facilitates Diaspora investment into Africa. So we're not just talking about business incubators at the moment. We're talking about it at a higher level before we target down into more business incubator aspects. But I think it is worth looking at the key features of this. So the idea is to harness the investment potential by creating this marketplace. So focusing on the most specific sectors with significant potential for investment and deployment, and therefore that's the idea. And therefore focusing then on contributing to economic growth and entrepreneurship. There are 3 key features which they're looking at in their feasibility study. We don't have access to the feasibility study. I'm checking every day to see when it is becoming available. The project was only meant to end 9 days ago, so we're not absolutely sure when all the information will be available. But the key features are investment facilitation. So a platform for Diaspora investments to identify and invest in viable business opportunities, including, and this is where I think we're coming back to our target, including startups and small enterprises, but are nurtured within business incubators. So you can see that one of the first key features is focused on entrepreneurs, on small enterprises and business incubators. So it looks at specific sectors that they say are ripe for investment. And if you go and see the material, that includes technology, it includes fashion, it includes agribusiness as well. So with the idea of channeling resources into certain sectors, of course, that's this feasibility study. It's not necessarily true for or not necessarily true for the other platforms and for the other investments and for the other activities being developed via Diaspora programs. And so the focus is also on support for specific entrepreneurs as well. So by connecting Diaspora investors, but not just investors, Diaspora, other types of organizations as well, for capacity building, for training, for export readiness type activities. But by connecting those with African entrepreneurs, i.e. also through obviously business incubators, the idea is then to help bridge this financing gap. And we'll come back to this, how Diasporas might help bridge the financing gap especially for specific business incubators and small entrepreneurs and small startups who often find it difficult to obtain financing, either to scale up or to start exporting either to Europe or to US or within Africa. Okay, so that's what we wanted to do there was to have the first resource, which I think it would be useful for people to see afterwards if they have an interest. And we are focusing on this in terms of this specific feasibility study to understand when the results will be available, because we think it's a key thing for Diaspora. But what I would like to do is to start the introduction, because as I said, we really want to make this as interactive as possible. We want to get your opinions. So so what we would like to do now, if that's okay, is to have your opinions on what would be the overall role, or what could be the overall role of Diasporas in helping entrepreneurship in your region and country. So really at the highest level, at the most general level, how could Diasporas help entrepreneurship in your region, in your country, so that we can understand what your opinions and your experience of this as well. Those of you who've been working with Diasporas, perhaps you could answer the question: what has been the overall role of your Diaspora networks in helping entrepreneurship in your region and country? Can I ask Barbara? Could you perhaps start sharing the screen as well?
Sure. Can you see my?
We can see the screen at the moment. We have one participant typing. I hope everyone has got the link. If you don't have the link, then you need it sent to you or shown in the chat again. But I think we've already put it in the chat, yes?
Yes, it's alright in the chat.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I've got lots of it, lots of them. Some very good answers there. Yeah, I understand. Very good. We've still got some people typing, so I think we can take another minute or so. Please do put everything there. We've got plenty of time today for interaction. So let's look at this when some people have finished typing. Wonderful. So yeah, we're looking at mentorship and investment. I think there's the two key things which have been identified by a number of people, but there's some very interesting things here. Market access as well. Fresh perspective and new business ideas. Yes. Market access, exportation. Support, yeah, absolutely. Global opportunities. yes, creating partnerships there as well. I think that's a key thing there. But through the Diaspora, it's possible that through Diaspora activities, then specific partnerships can be created as well. What I might say there is later on in the session, as we get towards the middle and actually gets toward the end of the session, we've got some examples of partnerships that have been developed, and indeed an example or sort of a guideline of how to create a partnership agreement, which might be interesting for anyone who's interested in partnerships. So let's go through some more social impact. I think that's very important. It's often not emphasized. The social and cultural aspects of Diaspora. So I'm very happy that that's been identified. Also, leverage on technical skills, technology. I think that's a very interesting aspect as well. That what we've been finding with when we've been working with the Diaspora series as well through BIC Africa, but some connections have been created that focus on technical skills in certain industries. We did one in the fashion industry, for instance. Training, mentorship, knowledge transfer. We'll get into those as well in more detail. I think that's very useful indeed. I like that point. I think which has just been made, mutual benefits. The idea here is, of course, with Diaspora, that it's a multi-way process. So I'm very glad that that's been put there as well. I think I've mentioned all the ones which are there: exportation and export readiness. Yes, networking, market funding and investment. I think that's of course that's very important as well. So that's a very good overview, I think, at the high level of how Diasporas can help entrepreneurship in general over the region and the country. Later on, we're going to ask a similar question about specifically for your business incubators, which I think maybe has a slightly more targeted response for that. We've still got some people typing, so we'll keep on going. Transfer, I think, just came up as well. Income, yes. Income and creating markets and being able to move income around, I think, is important as well. Okay, let me go back to sharing my screen if that's okay. Thank you so much for that. As I said, this is one, I think it is. Yes. Okay. Hopefully you can see my screen again.
Yes, perfect.
Thank you so much. What we thought we would do is, and those answers very much match with some of the, we have 3 or 4 slides and 3 or 4 examples now of what we were thinking at the overall level. So one, funding contributions, and of course many of you mentioned this about investment, about funding, etc. So for instance, through direct investments, I mean, Diaspora members can sometimes specifically invest in individual startups and businesses that are incubated in their home countries through angel investments, venture capital. There are crowdfunding initiatives as well, and we'll give 1 or 2 examples of those as we go through. There's a classic idea of remittances for business growth as well, and towards entrepreneurial ventures, and that helps. And Diasporas can help focus on that as well, often for seed capital or working capital. So that at the start of the process, there are many Diaspora platforms. Actually, the examples we gave there are more focused on crowdfunding initiatives. As we go through, we'll show you more and more platforms as well, which are often used for identifying and raising investments as well. So investments and funding contributions are very important very important indeed for this process. One example is something called home strings. If you've heard of home strings or you've used home strings, and maybe put that in the chat if you have any experiences of that. But home strings, and there is a link there, and actually at the end we have a list of resources which we have more information on this. But home strings is a company now which is over 10 years old, and they look at investment opportunities in emerging markets, frontier markets, including obviously in certain countries in Africa. So it started as a web-based crowdfunding platform, but then has moved to to develop and expanded their focus beyond crowdfunding and really got into emerging market transactions. So if there are business incubators who are participating, who would be interested in understanding what for instance, organizations like HomeStrings do, and we have more in future parts of this presentation, then we would very much encourage people to get in contact with them. They're very open, and of course they'll answer you immediately. And some of you may already have experience with them, but it's one example of funding contributions as a part of the contributions to entrepreneurship in regions as a whole. You also mentioned mentorship contributions, which I think were very interesting as well. And mentorship really is a key aspect, and BIC Africa indeed run a number of these types of activities as well. But mentorship is, of course, absolute key, and mentorship and going beyond mentorship to capacity building and training as well. So it's access to advanced knowledge and skills which had been acquired in the diaspora host countries. It can start off from, but mentorship can be on global best practices, but also can be on industries trainings, business strategies, specific export readiness, and other activities which startups and business incubators may want to access as well. So we really mentorship works very well within the diaspora network if the network has been set up correctly with the correct platforms and the correct methodologies and the correct connections. There's also virtual coaching and workshops. There's a number of these. I'm sure you've been involved in them. Lots of virtual training and online sessions, targeting down to one-to-one coaching as well, which can be run through the diaspora networks. Obviously on leadership, marketing, financial management, product development, also specifically about certain countries, also about certain industries. BIC Africa recently did, I think I mentioned one on the fashion sector, which has certain aspects and characteristics which came out nicely from the 3 diaspora members based in Europe who were talking about who gave presentations on that. And of course, capacity building for incubators as well. Diasporas don't just include individual entrepreneurs; they also include incubators and all sorts of other types of organizations, which we'll get into today. And of course, they can focus then completely. They can also focus on incubators and incubator staff. So really providing capacity building and exchanges of experience with those incubator staff to enhance ability to support startups. One example of those is the African Diaspora Network. Again, we have the link there. They have a strategic plan, and they have a strategic plan, and that network provides lots of mentorship opportunities and training opportunities. So again, I would advise you to, if you're interested in what they can do, and maybe you're already interacting with them, please do get, they're worth getting in contact with them. The African Diaspora Network, they have a strategic plan, as you can see here, and they're quite active. We find that they're quite active. I think that the third one we wanted to highlight, third area, is market access contributions. And again, within the word cloud, you could see that came out very clearly as well. And maybe we can highlight a few things here as well. So within global networks, Diaspora members open the doors to international markets through professional social networks in the countries in which they are. Diaspora trade associations, as an example, often help African businesses connect with potential customers, partners and distributors as well. It's not just customers, of course, in which the diaspora can help. Really, they do help facilitate exports and exportation as well. I noticed that a number of you had put that into the word cloud as well. So regulatory requirements, especially in certain sectors, agribusiness, for instance, can really be quite strict and quite difficult to understand at the start. Of course, diaspora communities really can really help with these types of regulatory requirements, and indeed the market and the preferences of the customers as well, to understand how they link to the regulatory requirements. And then strategic partnerships. I was very pleased that a few people mentioned strategic partnerships and memberships in the word cloud. Of course, the Diaspora members can forge partnerships with incubators and corporations, universities, innovation hubs, individual entrepreneurs, and many other types of organizations indeed. And indeed, we have an example here of market contributions of the African Diaspora Chambers of Commerce. There are individual country chambers of commerce, of course, for Diaspora, but this is at the African level, the ADCC, and they've got a number of interesting things as well that to help in global networks, to help in export facilitation as well. So again, it's a resource which I think is useful to look up if your incubator is. And if your organization or if yourself are interested in taking this a bit further. Now, if that's all I wanted to move to talk about the general implications of Diasporas. I want to get now target down into the second part of part A2, mapping Diaspora ecosystems. Now, this is the first step in how most organizations, most countries, most regions go about in defining and developing Diaspora. Is to first map it to understand what's included in what should be included, and therefore how to have an action plan, how to have a strategy, and then the specific activities associated with that, then to really maximize the impact of the Diaspora. Okay, so if that's okay, again, I think what we'll do is we'll go straight into looking at steps for Diaspora. So what we've got here on the slide now is if we're looking for define the purpose of mapping define the steps in how to map Diasporas. So mapping Diasporas for business incubators obviously involves identifying and understanding the connections, resources, and potential contributions of communities to the entrepreneurial ecosystems. We've got a 5 steps here, and we'll go through them in more detail here. But I've put a simple 5-step set of activities here. Some people have more, some people have less. It depends on how you're doing it. But really, to define the purpose of mapping, identify the target Diaspora communities, collect data on Diaspora members, analyze the resources, and then, of course, provide the mapping. And there's some other aspects which we'll get into after that in terms of how you move that into an action plan. But the first step the first element we would normally say would be to have this type of step-by-step program to first of all to map the Diaspora. I'd be interested in if it's okay in having your opinion on this next slide. So, what elements could be included in a Diaspora ecosystems map? So this question here is focused on, it's another word cloud. What kind of elements would be included in a Diaspora map? Just to give you some context of where we're going next, we'll then go into those 5 steps in more detail, and indeed provide an example of a Diaspora map, which was a very nice one. I like it very much. Which was created for Ethiopia, and many of the participants, they might have already been included there in that process. So, but if we could, and maybe I could ask Barbara to move onto your screen now. If we could, let's see what elements you think should be included in the Diaspora ecosystems map, and then we can show these how they link to the steps, and indeed to the example that we will then show.
Sure, I'm sharing my screen now.
If people have any questions, just put them in the comments, obviously, or sorry, in the chat. I think we have anyone replying at the moment, but I see the link is in the chat as well. Of course, no problem if you prefer not to reply. That's fine. We can move on and show the steps. But I see some people now are starting. Oh, great. Very interesting. That's a very interesting first contribution. Thank you so much. Financial resources, geographical distribution, knowledge hubs, key individuals, education opportunity, background. Yes. Yes, very much so. I think we still have some more people typing. Thank you so much for this. Digital platforms, yes, absolutely. Digital platforms, and we'll get into those. Really, very, very important for Diaspora activities. Okay, we still have some people typing, so we'll leave it open for a little while again. Activity sectors preferences, yes. I think as again we target down to specific countries on specific countries and maybe activities for Diaspora, then yes, it does. There is a very important aspect of how you focus on specific sectors, and if that's necessary. So let's just go through them. We've got activity sector preferences and areas of interest. I think that's very important. Capacity of funding, yes. Legal resource. Thank you so much for including that. Legal resources from the Diaspora is a very important aspect, and a very important aspect as well as geographical distributions, investors, financial, I think is there. And then we have a series of things like networking, events, unity. I think is important as well. There are many different designs of how Diaspora ecosystems are mapped, and they can get quite complicated. So it's quite interesting how some mappings really focus on only certain. It's interesting how some mappings focus on certain areas of interest. And certain types of events and certain aspects of all of these elements. Networking has been identified by more than one person. Thank you for that. Investors from the Diaspora, yes. Geographical distribution, capacity of funding, great. Background. I like the idea of background here. The social and cultural aspects of a Diaspora are really very important, and you can see how they drive the more economic, it's more economy and financial aspects. You can see how in many Diaspora they're being driven by also a joint understanding of background and culture here. Clear expectations in terms of ROI, yes, and I think in terms of partnerships, it's very important to be clear on indeed what is the Diaspora there for, and what individual partners can do. That's going to get into partnership agreements, which we will go on to towards the end of today. Community network, cultural identity, and education. Thanks so much. That's a much better way of explaining what I was trying to say. Maybe we could go. Maybe that's okay. We'll go back to my screen. Okay. Thank you so much for that. Okay.
Thank you. We can see yours.
Excellent. So what I wanted to do, if you remember, let's just go back. If you remember those 5 steps, just wanted to provide a little more detail on those 5 steps, which I hope will be useful for you when developing the Diaspora mapping. Then before we show you an example. So define the purpose of mapping, step 1, to clarify the objectives, and some of those objectives were made so clear in that word cloud. Thank you very much for that. So attracting funding, mentorship and skill transfer, you mentioned those. Enhancing market access building long-term partnerships. Again, thank you so much for that focus as well. Then identifying target communities. So perhaps the mapping can focus on Diaspora groups that are most relevant to, for instance, the incubators or to the region's mission, both geographically and sectorally. And also there's a demographic as well. So many of these Diaspora community maps, Diaspora maps, really focus on what's available in terms of alumni and specific entrepreneurs with ties to the home region. Then collecting data, how to collect data. And collecting data is often the most difficult part. Of course it is. It's so how does one do that? Through other diaspora organizations and networks and cultural groups and trade associations. Using social media and digital platforms is especially diasporas. It could be diaspora specific applications, but also LinkedIn and Facebook and organizations and frameworks such as BIC Africa, for instance. Many times surveys and interviews are done, so direct engagement with diaspora members. And that's what the example I'm going to give you, which is from a project in Ethiopia that they specifically did that. Then, of course, to analyze the resources. And again, the word cloud identified this very well. Financial, intellectual, social, and market access. So financial, types of funding that is available, intellectual, mentorship training, expertise, and especially expertise that's available in specialized fields. Social, so connections, partnerships, networks, the social aspects of this. And then market access, of course, how the diaspora and what aspects of the diaspora can support foreign entities or entities entering the market. And then in terms of then let's go to sorry, I've missed a. There we go, got it. Slide 5. Sorry, point 5. Then is, of course, how do you actually map the stakeholders and networks and to identify the key players in the ecosystem? Of course, the relationships should be visualized in some way. Actually, the one we're going to show you is it has some visualization. The more information are created, the more complicated they become. And what I will show you was, I will put on screen. We'll have to zoom in because it is at least on the PDF, but it's somewhat difficult to see. But many of these are done on things like Miro, which of course are then, if you have the software, are much easier to see how everything works. One of the things which I didn't put into the 5 steps, but I think is linked to something which you definitely said, is highlighting opportunities. So highlighting areas in like types of activities, types of geographical areas, or any other aspects in which diaspora engagement can engage and provide the most value. So startups which align with specific diaspora expertise in industries, regions, or sectors, or specific incubator programs that could have specific types of support. Excellent. So those are the 5 steps. Please, as I say, put any comments and questions in the chat as we go through. What I want to do now is to show an example of a map. Now, this is from a project, and thank you very much for those allowing us to show that. It's a project in Ethiopia. I know many of you who are registered are located in Ethiopia. I've been working in Ethiopia a number of times over the past 10 years or so, or more, 15 years in fact. So perhaps thanks to GIZ for allowing us to show this map, and it's also created by through a team led by EBN. So the aim was to foster Ethiopian diaspora engagement overall, but then the initial aim was to identify, qualify, and highlight the Office of Support, the top players, the entrepreneurs, the incubators, and businesses in Ethiopia. And so a diaspora ecosystem map was created. Now, give me a second to change my screen to what I need to show you, because as I said, it's in PDF. So if you don't mind, I'll just open it now, and hopefully this works. Can I confirm you can see the PDF, the map?
Yes,
Yes.
we can.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not expecting you to be able to read things at the moment. We'll go in with more details. First of all, I just wanted to show you an overall view of what this particular map looks like. And the idea is engaging Ethiopian diaspora in Ethiopia, the PSDE output of ecosystem mapping. There are 3 elements to it, and we'll look at those. We'll look at those one by one. There's one here, and one here. But we'll go into those one by one so you can see on the screen. Please do tell me in the chat if there are some issues on the screen. Those of you who perhaps are using just a small screen, my apologies on this, but these maps do get relatively complex. So let's go into diaspora profiles first. Give me a second to make sure that I can show you things, and we'll just have to move around the map the map as best we can. So first of all, we're just going to focus on here about diaspora profiles, and which is on your screens, which is the left-hand side of the screen. And here you can see, obviously, we're not going to go through these one by one, but you can see there's the Ethiopian professionals networks, all the activities and the individual people, organizations and people who are, let's go over here so you can see it, who are involved in the Ethiopian professionals networks. And then we have some more MIT people coming here, and you can see that then through the map, you can see the locations there as well. You can see these are located in the diaspora region, so you can see how they're location-based: Silicon Valley, West Coast, LA, and the organizations and the individuals who are relevant to the diaspora. Private equity funds there going on as well, moving into Canada as well, the Ethiopian Canadian professionals networks and the individuals that are linked to them. Moving into Europe, we have the Netherlands and Germany, and then more generically, let me go up here, Northern Europe individually as well. We have the organizations, the community groups, including social media. Indeed, we have some comments on the activity levels as well of these organizations, plus the individual people, and obviously on the interactive version, where you have an ability of knowing how to access them. Going down into more generic Northern Europe, but then also in the UK, the types of the organizations and people in the UK. And then as we go down into Ethiopia itself and Africa, the organizations that are based in Ethiopia, but which are focused on the overall diaspora activities. So the Ethiopian Diaspora Association, the Addis Ababa Diaspora Association, the Ethiopian Diaspora Fellowship, and indeed moving on to similar types of more general for Africa and the Middle East as well. So on that side of the map, we have the diaspora profiles, key people and networks. Okay, let me see if I can show you the other side of the map. This side of the map has two major elements. And I think what we'll do first is we'll go actually to the bottom, to the Ethiopian ecosystem first. So the Ethiopian ecosystem goes up here, and it is identified by activity and also by the activity sector. So finance, foreign direct investments, universities, and the organizations and the activities and the programs and the projects and the people who have more focus on finance in Ethiopia for ensuring export readiness. Universities, of course, and the specific centers at universities that have some focus on entrepreneurship. Of course, that's very important for the ecosystem. Then you have the incubation and innovation hubs here, which are shown. Many of you will know them already, of course, and some of you might already be members or indeed running those hubs. They're very involved in BIC Africa. I recognize them all, of course. And then the government as well as a major player in this, both the ministry levels and then going down into specific commissions and specific infrastructure elements as well. And then finally, on this particular map, we have engagements. So I hope you can see that on your screens. Key sectors, types of engagements, the most common skills, and the different ecosystems and profiles. So the idea here being that on the map, we have the key sectors. Here is creative industries, agro industry, healthcare, environment, construction, finance. The types of engagements, again, we were discussing that in the word cloud as well. The most common skills and the different ecosystems. So let me reduce that to something which I understand you can't see, but at least you have the the overall view of the map. It's designed to be a one page, but of course I'm showing it on PDF in the relevant software. You can go in and out and add and find other information as well. Great. So that's what I wanted to show you in terms of an ecosystem map. I haven't see any comments in the chat, but of course, are there any comments regarding specifically this this map or regarding this map? And please just put them in the chat, and of course we can take those. Some of you, I'm sure, were involved in doing this specific map. To answer the question, but it's just been shown. Yes, we will be sharing. And sorry, that's my fault. I should have said this. Of course, all the material will be shared, as indeed will be the video of this session. Excellent. So to keep things moving along, then maybe let me go back to this. Let me go back to sharing the screen. I seem to have gone all the way back to the original screen. So, sorry. Let me share it again. I will stop sharing and then start sharing to make it easier. Okay. Just let me put it on. Should go onto slideshow any minute. There we go. That's better. Okay. So that was the map provided as in a PDF. We provided it as a PDF document. But I think it's a very good example. I really like that map of how how a mapping can be done and how it can then show and really identify what contributions can be done, and as we go through today's session, the activities and programs that can also be on which we can also focus. So the last part of part A is specific contributions of Diaspora to business incubators. Now, we were going to ask another question here, but Barbara, please don't put it on the chat, because I really think your answers to the last one were so complete, but I think we've already, it would be to repeat that exercise, which I don't think that we need to do. The answers were so complete to the previous one, but I think we may as well go straight forward into talking about these specific contributions, as I said, because the answers, you'll see all the vocabulary and terminology that you've already put into the last word cloud. First of all, what we wanted to do is just show an example. Actually, this is from a few years ago, but I still think is worth doing, of a sort of a pyramid done by two authors, which are shown here, and the link is here as for all the documents we refer to mobilize diaspora entrepreneurship for development. So they identified 5 different types of involvement: venture capital and partnerships, investment, training, mentorship, networking. So they identified all these 5 types of activities, types of involvement, and put them in to a pyramid. And the idea here, which they were trying to get to, is that for a variety of reasons, resources, time, the actors involved which are required at each level of this, there are some things which could be said more passive forms of support, and then some more active forms of support. And the more active ones are right at the top, and the more passive ones are towards the bottom. Now, the idea is not to agree or disagree with this particular idea, but just to understand that maybe this is one way of thinking about how Diasporas can work and what other contributions and involvements that can be done. So moving from the bottom, in terms of more passive, networking, then mentoring and training, and then really onto the financial aspects and support, financing aspects of investment and venture capitals, and then signed formal partnerships. We go through these a little bit, and again, you'll see how these link into what you said previously, which is why I didn't effectively ask the same question. So financial contributions, such as venture capital, partnerships, and investments. So those types of contributions can involve angel investments, venture capital, providing early stage start funding for startups. As I said, there's a number of now crowdfunding platforms that have been developed, focusing on mobilizing collective contributions for specific ventures, like crowdfunding, but via platforms via Diasporas. And then there are things called Diaspora bonds themselves, which can support, which are really sort of government-led, or items, which then bonds which can then support incubators through government-led Diaspora bonds, and then grants and donations, providing operational project-based funding, and or indeed helping to access those other grants that are available from say development agencies as well. And then there's training contributions, so sessions, delivering specialized sessions, knowledge transfer. Of course, these are the things which we were quite clearly discussing before. Mentoring, again, mentorship, guidance, and expertise for startups from Diaspora professionals, be it one-to-one as mainly in mentoring, or slightly wider, where mentors can deal with 2 or 3 different organizations at the same time, including on leadership development, so enhancing skills for startup founders. So it's not just about the local market, it's not just about export readiness and these types of activities, but also what has the mentor learned from their backgrounds of being both from the target country and also from the also located in Europe or the US at the Diaspora. So what they learned and how that information can be provided through mentorship programs, either one-to-one or through larger mentorship programs which business incubators often run. And then networking, which can lead to certain things such as market access, so introducing startups to local and business networks, helping trade facilitation and export readiness. Let's take those two points together, because I think it's they're very relevant to take together. So trade facilitation, export readiness, preparing small businesses for international markets. There's a lot of regulation, there's a lot of investment required. Often there's a requirement to meet distributors and partners, etc., and Diaspora can really help on that with a correct action plan. And indeed, through that trade facilitation, connecting startups with buyers and distributors. And then partnerships. Here we've identified collaborations of international entities, but I think that might give the wrong impression. Of course, this is also partnerships between specific Diaspora members in the specific target country as well. So it's not just with large-scale international entities. It's how partnerships can be developed between your incubator and incubators or other relevant organizations within the Diaspora. So it can be small scale and large scale. These types of partnerships, I think, is what we're trying to focus on. There's something which wasn't shown in the pyramid which you identified in the word cloud, and we've got here as well, about social contributions as well. The social contributions of the Diaspora. So via community building. So community building to create supportive ecosystems, but really to show cultural intermediaries to help navigate cultural nuances abroad. And I think the cultural similarities, of course, between the Diaspora organizations and the in-country organizations, of course, is relevant here. And indeed, advocacy, just to promote incubator programs and startups on global and country platforms. So to have a Diaspora to do that is indeed very useful indeed. So maybe just go back to what the platform was, because you can see venture capital, investment, training, and mentoring. Now, just to finish off part A, Barbara, could I ask you to show on your screen the results of the last word cloud, where people, so let's just make sure that we've covered them all, and if not, then we can describe it. Would that be possible?
Okay, let me just find it. Just a minute.
No problem if not, Barbie.
I think I can share the image with you because I have a print screen.
Yeah, that's great.
Just sharing my screen now. Okay. Let's see. Can you see?
No, that's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Good.
Because I think this links to a lot of what we were saying. So networking, the platforms, the funding, investors, community network, cultural identity, education. That was the social aspects, the knowledge hubs, the geographical distribution, and clear expectations of ROI. And that was to do with the map, but I think that's also included there. Also the financial resources and legal resources. I think that's also very useful indeed. So I think we've covered most of that areas, and also the areas of what you said in the previous one, which was about the contributions at the sort of the overall entrepreneurship level as well. So I think we've covered everything that you said within within those following slides. Of course, if it's something which you mentioned in the word cloud which you don't think that we were able to cover, then please do put it in the chat. And after the break, we'll have a break relatively soon. After the break, then we'll make sure that we cover those as well. So if there's anything which you think you've mentioned so far, which you think we've missed, then do put it in the chat, and we'll make sure that we deal with that after we deal with that after the break. I'm going to now share my screen. Again, hopefully that works. Yes. Now we've had about an hour. What I suggest is we just go briefly into the second part B, and then have a break. I hope that's okay for you, Christina. Maybe another 15 minutes or so, and then have a break.
Yeah, sure, as you prefer. Either before in 15 minutes, if you prefer to go on, then sure.
Let's have a short period now on starting part B, if that's okay for everyone.
Sure.
I hope.
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks.
Just to have one question about strategies for part B is strategies for effective management of Diaspora. And first part of that is challenges, because challenges are, of course, challenges and barriers are an element of anything which we try to do. I do have a question, because I think this will lead us nicely into after the break as well. So maybe I can ask then people just to comment on this. So what do you think are the major challenges and barriers to effective engagement of Diasporas? And then after the break, sort of after you answer this, then of course we can go back to those and see how building connections, etc., how we can make sure that we meet those or overcome those challenges and barriers. So if Barbara, could you put the link into the chat?
Okay, it's already.
Fantastic. And then maybe we can move to your screen.
Okay. Here, and I'm sharing my screen.
Okay, I'm really interested in your answers to this, because overcoming the barriers and challenges to Diasporas is, of course, one of the key aspects of developing these types of action plans and platforms, etc., which we're moving towards in this session and after the session as well. So thank you so much for identifying some of these barriers and challenges. I think some good ones are coming up. Data gaps, distance, fragmentation, yes. Difficulty of access, yes, of course. Social barriers, very important. Political barriers, very, very important as well. What else are we getting? Generation gaps. Yes, it's very. That's a very interesting point for Diaspora about the potential differences between generations, between different elements and locations in the mapping of Diasporas. Economic challenges, yes, absolutely. In general, I think that's very important as well. Countries, homes, and remittances, yes. Gap in feedback loops, very important. I like that point, but really to implement a Diaspora network, so much feedback and multi-way communication is required. There's still one or two more people going, so let's wait a while to get there. Difficulty in accessing Diaspora members, yes. I think that's relevant both initially and on an ongoing basis as well. Psychosocial challenges, yes. Again, coming back to this cultural, these social aspects. Different countries, yes, because sometimes it's difficult to understand exactly, to limit or target to certain countries. Lack of trust, that's a good one. Absolutely, how to build trust is very important. Potential disconnections between people and different organizations. Again, people with different, also potentially with organizations and people with different objectives. Of course, that's a challenge which one needs to get over when effectively engaging Diasporas. And not knowing hospitality frameworks, those cultural differences, absolutely very, very important. I think that was mentioned in the last one, and we tried to add it on to the as a sort of a social aspect as well, to the 5 steps in developing a map. Okay, I think that we might be finishing. It says one participant, but I think we've been through as well as remittances, size countries, integration, disconnection, lack of trust. Maybe another 20 or 30 seconds ago. Political barriers, I think I mentioned, one of the first I mentioned, but yes, that's very important. And government policies is there as just been added as well. Excellent. If I can, maybe just another 20 seconds, because I think people are still typing. And okay, now that's it. Integration. That's the last one I didn't see. Integration. Yeah, absolutely. How to integrate through all of these aspects on an ongoing basis, of course, is of course one of the major challenges. Fantastic. What I'll do is I'll go back again to my slides, which you should be able to see now, and go to my answers, or the things which I put on the slides. I think really all of them are have been were included in your word cloud there. So thank you so much. So trust and engagement deficits. That's someone someone specifically identified lack of trust. Financial barriers, yes, that was identified. Knowledge and not mismatches in knowledge, that could be a potential challenge as well. You also mentioned policies and the political aspects and regulation as well. IT constraints maybe are less important now. I think they were important more and more a few years ago, but as we move through, I think perhaps you're right not to focus on IT constraints. That's probably a much smaller aspect. Limited, he mentioned this as well, but making sure that people understand the success stories and impact. Competing priorities, people mentioned. Economic and political instability. There were government policies and political points there, which was in the word cloud as well. Sometimes some institutions have a limited capacity. I think that's on a institution by institution basis. And then communication and networking barriers. So I think with those, I actually quite prefer some of I think a lot of the ones which you put in the word clouds are describe better those potential challenges and barriers. But I think we've got overall agreement on what they are as we move towards the end of this first part of a session. As a last slide of this session, I just wanted to show some possible solutions which some people have identified, and I'll explain why I wanted to show you these. So building trust through transparency and regular reporting. So that trust building is being transparent, giving lots of information, reporting on what the organizations are doing, and being clear on the successes and failures. I think that very much helps to bring trust. Specific financial products can be developed, such as crowdfunding such as crowdfunding platforms or sections of crowdfunding platforms which are perhaps more general, which have already been identified and used. If you have government involvement in enhancing policies to support investments and contributions from diaspora, policies and programs perhaps would be a better way of putting that. Then we have things which are training and aligning resources to training, and also aligning resources for specific local needs and specific diaspora needs, and indeed to the benefits of the diaspora, because this has to be a win-win. Obviously, we're looking for win-win situations here. And the last one, which is what we're going to get onto in after the break, is somewhat after the break, is strengthening communication. So how do you build connections? How do you strengthen communication? How do you build connections? And the idea is that we'll get to that as we move over the break. So these potential solutions, these possible solutions, very much are linked to both the potential barriers and challenges in the previous slide, and also those ones which you identified very thoroughly in the word cloud through Slido. So if that's okay, what I would suggest now, Christina, is that we have a break.
Sure.
Let me stop sharing just for a while so that we can see everyone. So Christina, and if everyone's okay, what I suggest is we have a 20-minute break to 1/4 to the hour. Everyone's in different time zones, but I think everyone's roughly using at least the same terminology for an hour. It's 25 past the hour it's 25 past the hour. What's a 20-minute break? 45 past the hour. Yes. 15 minutes to the hour or 45 minutes?
Yeah, maybe 50 minutes to the hour. Yeah. So 1:50 Central European time and 3:50 Eastern European time.
Yeah, so if everyone's happy to take a break, because I'm so happy with all the contributions and all the interactions, but I know people have got other things to do, emails, and also need to rest as well, because I know contributing to these things and participating is to these sessions, of course, takes effort. So maybe a 20-minute break to 1/4 to the hour, and we'll see you again then in 20 minutes.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, Douglas.
Thank you
See
so much.
everyone.
Hi, Christina. I think we might have been a differences of 45 to and 50 and 10 to, and so I assume we should wait another 5 minutes.
As you prefer, yeah.
Well, I
Perhaps
saw in the comments,
a few more minutes.
that it was to 10 to the hour rather than 50.
Yeah, just to
So
give 20 minutes. So
yeah, no, I introduced the break too too long. Maybe we wait for another 5 minutes then.
Sure.
So just to confirm to everyone who's already here, we're waiting another, say, 4 minutes until 10 to the hour to start, to make sure that everyone can come back on time. Okay, so by my clock, it's 10 to the hour. If that's okay with you, Christina, and for everyone else. I'll just go ahead and start again.
Sure, yeah, I think we can start.
1 second as I go to the right place in the documents. Up here. Here we go. Okay. So thank you very much. I hope people are back from the break. As people might be coming back a little late, we'll go over some material before we ask any further questions and any further interactions for a few minutes. So restarting part B, which is strategies for the effective management of diasporas, and part B2 is about building connections. If you remember what we were talking about before, the challenges. And one of those challenges was how to strengthen communication and build the connections. And this is what we wanted to focus on in the first part of this second of the next element. Just to put everyone's mind at rest, we of course will be ensuring that we finish on time, so that we will finish in the hour and 10 minutes or so that we have. Again, all questions via chat are very welcome indeed. We would very much appreciate any questions you have via the chat. So part B2, building connections. And what we wanted to do first was introduce you to something which is another GIZ report, which is public information. The link is there. It's a very interesting report. Diaspora Engagement Model for Development. It's published by the African Diaspora Policy Center, and the link is there, and the link is also at towards the end of the presentation as well. Again, supported by GIZ. Published in 2021, so it's quite recent as well. It's worth going to, and we'll just pick out one or two things relevant for today. It has a model of 8 pillars. And those eight are shown in the diagram. Just let me explain a bit. The report, the sort of the guidelines focus a little bit more than perhaps we're looking at on government actions, but they have good examples, we think, for other entities as well, especially in the 2 pillars which are highlighted, or rather got a circle around: the outreach strategy and the diaspora oriented programs, because we think that links into what we're talking about as well. But look, if you see the rest of them, obviously political will is there, knowledge of diaspora, creating an environment, creating the mechanisms for consultation, and indeed a policy. As you can see, some of these are more at the state, the government, the regional level. But I think they work. Some of them work very well indeed for what we're talking about today. So maybe we'll just go over the 2 pillars which we've highlighted there. Firstly, outreach strategy, and secondly, the diaspora oriented programs. So first of all, looking at the outreach strategy, and you can see on the right-hand side where this is in this kind of this structure of pillars. And the advice and the guidelines here are about being innovative with limited resources, so using social media, radio, and other platforms. Using a mix of channels in the outreach strategy according to the different profiles and geographies. Make sure there's no restriction and that all channels are well known. This idea of building trust by not discriminating against specific members, by being transparent in everything that is done in the communication and the connections methodology is very important. Making sure that it's a 2-way or even multi-way conversation. So it's not just about pushing information from A to B, but listening, but changing, updating, etc. Really making sure that there's feedback there. And I remember one of the participants in one of the word clouds through Slido specifically identified that a well-functioning feedback loop is absolutely essential in a well-functioning diaspora network. And of course, supporting the overall umbrella organizations as well. So I would advise to go to this report. As I said, in essence, it's looking at what governments can do, but some of those activities are also what individual entities within the ecosystem and incubators can do as well. Going further, and in this outreach strategy, they show an activity and expected outcome. So and they link this between short run, medium run, and long run. So there's a nice way of that they show this. So in the short run, the activity of creating and using social media accounts, and then the outcome of that is how becoming familiar with diverse social media platforms. In the medium run, of course, this is government focused, but you can take out the word government here and put in other types of organizations. So missions to host countries to provide information, to build trust, to build a sense of support and partnership. So with the expected outcome of formal channels being functional and moving towards long-term engagement and long-term partnerships. And in the long run, working with the established network and umbrella organizations that you've done, and so that they will then be prepared to assist the mobilization strategy of the diaspora. So you can see there that there's some very specific ideas within this report. And I think this is useful for engaging diaspora and these building connections of short run, medium run, and long run activities, and showing what the expected outcome of those would be. Perhaps moving on to the second pillar of specific interest for us, which we want to focus on today, is the diaspora-oriented programs. Now, again, they're seeing this from a government point of view, but of course, we can see it from the point of view of our individual organizations and individuals as well. So there's three ideas here which they highlight: promoting and designing diaspora-oriented programs that are in line with the overall agenda. So remember, if we looked at that, the diaspora ecosystem map, the mapping exercise, which identified the priority areas and strategies which then the diaspora can contribute. So that map really feeds into the design of these types of programs. To develop regional local agencies' knowledge for effective diaspora entrepreneurship and investment schemes. So really creating programs that develop local knowledge as well of what the diaspora can do and what's indeed for those organizations in Europe or the US, what are the capacities and knowledge of those organizations and individuals that are in the host country. And then leveraging certain activities towards the goals of regional and national strategy. I kept this in here because I think it is important, and it was in the mapping, that the overall government, national and regional strategies are very important for these diasporas, for diaspora networks, to make sure that it really will going to have an impact at the government and the national and the regional level, because it's aligned with goals and strategies at that national and regional level. So making sure that the key priority areas and strategies and activities have a link to what the overall government and state are prepared to fund, of course, is important to help the diaspora engagement process. Again, and just one last slide on this. In the same way as for the outreach strategy pillar, there's a move between you can see between activity and expected outcome for the short run, medium run, and long run. So in the short run, undertaking outreach activities in partnership. In the medium run, initiating skills and knowledge transfer programs. This can be done at the government level, but it can be done at the university level, can be done at the incubator level, for instance, as well, of course. And in the long run, overall increasing the regional authorities and agencies' knowledge of the diaspora, because in that way, programming the new programs, more relevant, larger activities can be planned with better funding from the government and regional authorities. As you can see, the expected outcomes there highlight these types of aspects of government, diaspora, and government working together. Organizations such as universities and other general entities becoming more understanding and more engaged with the diaspora, improving the quality of higher education, and local authorities in the long run really getting knowledge and information about how to implement effective diaspora investment schemes. So I like the way that they've identified these things, as I said, many at the government level, but how we can target it down to some of the things we're talking about as well at the incubator and about the individual entity level. I see there's a question from Christina about in terms of creation and development of programs connected to Diaspora and concrete steps. That's almost exactly what we're going to get on to next, Christina. So thank you for it's a very well timed question. Thank you. So in the next part of the session, what I would like to do, get together, is we want to ask one question specifically, which really answers that very, very much, Christina. So first of all, asking the question, and we would very much appreciate some comments on that. Thank you, Barbara, for putting the link in of what activities can be implemented to build connections with Diasporas. And then we'll get on to some specific examples of how it's been done, and therefore specific concrete methodologies to implement these types of connections, activities, and to highlight connections. So I know it's the first question after the break. I hope I hope people are able to comment on this. So maybe I can ask you to, Barbara, to share your screen.
Sure, it's on.
Thank you so much. And if people are able to participate in this, I'd really like to see how your thoughts and your opinions, and therefore how we can feed those in to make sure that we're covering correctly the specific ways and examples of building connections, which we're going to move on to. So very good. Digital platforms, networking events, mentorship programs, cultural events and festivals. Absolutely, yes. I think these are key activities to build connections. Quite a lot came on one. So aim, invest, engage, mentors, yes. Incubator, potentially virtual events, yes. I think that's very important. Communities, social media, yes. That's very important as well. Mentorship has come up a number of times there. That's good as well. Newsletters, yes, I think that's a very good idea as well. I think I mentioned digital platforms, but having been mentioned before, I think that's a very relevant one, which is identified there. Workshops, yes, I think there's networking events. And seeing what else was just being added. We still have one or two people typing, so happy to keep that going for a while. We sort of see more people still adding, so I think these are always good. So let's just keep it open for another 30 seconds. So creating an enabling environment, absolutely, yes. I like the way that has an overall impact on all of these connections. I think I've mentioned everything which is there. Mentorship, newsletters, platforms, social media, communities, forums. Yes, forums are very good as well. Networking events, workshops, virtual events, all creating an enabling environment. Very, very interesting indeed. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so what I'll do then is sorry, field visits came in there. Yes, thank you. That was a new one. Yes, I like that. Both field visits, both in a specific country and of course in the diaspora as well. So let me go back to my screen. And let's see how we've managed to feed those into some specific examples. So I'll just show you two slides and then go back. So what I've done in the next few slides is identify some of the types of things which you've been talking about and providing a little bit more detail, and then going in to provide examples of them. So that's how I think I see the next few minutes, so that we can discuss what the ideas which you put in, but also show some specific examples. We can't go to those examples one by one on the websites just now, but of course they're there for you to see in the future. So many people identified This first one of host networking and outreach events. You talked about webinars, you talked about social events, you talked about cultural events. I think we've got some aspects here. So Diaspora conferences, including investment summits. So there's obviously be they online or in person, showing investment summits often featuring startup showcases, so they can really see how to the investment aspects can be shown. Regular webinars highlighting opportunities and success stories. This idea of storytelling through success is very important. It's a very important aspect of these networking, outreaching, event type activities. And also social events. So cultural aspects, either as part or as a focus of the networking and outreach events, can really help to build trust, personal connections, and overcome many aspects of what people were saying in the previous interactions about how to make sure that socially and culturally the different diaspora organizations from different outlooks, from different objectives, from different countries can come together. Let's give you some examples of those. Again, these are examples which we picked, which we know about, which seem interesting. Diaspora conferences, the Nigeria Diaspora Investment Summit. The next one will be in 2025. Yes, 300 days or so. It's towards the end of the year. This is an annual event that aims to create platforms where investors can interact with, in this case, Nigerian startups, small, micro and small companies, also government officials. So the idea is to have pitching sessions, exhibitions, networking opportunities. It's a very interesting event, which of course can be the structure of which can be used. That's a Nigeria Diaspora Investment Summit, and of course you go to the website and there's much more information there about that. So that was the first bullet point about Diaspora conferences. If you can see on the left-hand side of your screen, we're going to go through each of the 3 bullet points. Now, webinars. Now, there are many examples of webinars highlighting success stories. If you don't mind, I took the opportunity here to highlight BIC Africa because I think there's a nice BIC Africa, a whole series of nice webinars on a whole series of different types of aspects. In this case, it's about Diaspora Entrepreneurship webinar series. We had one just before Christmas. There'll be one coming up in the next couple of months or so. If you have time to read and go, there'll be 6 webinars in 2024 and 25. And so the first one was in April 2024. They've been country specific. We had one on Angola. They've been sector specific. We had on fashion. We're open to all sorts of new ideas as well on what specific type of diaspora you would like us to focus on, which you would like us to focus. So please do get in contact with us at any time or write in the chat if just now, if you think that a webinar on a certain area, a certain sector, a certain country would be of interest, please just tell us, and of course we can bear those in mind. Again, of course, we've given you the link there as well. And social events. Now, social events are often part of other larger types of events. We highlighted one in Ethiopia, which some of you may know, that there's an Ethiopian Diaspora Business Dinner and Networking that's organized by various Ethiopian business chambers, but it often has a cultural performances and a cultural aspect to the event. The one we've shown you was with a US Chamber of Commerce in Ethiopia, and something which they did, I think, a couple of years ago or so. These types of networking events, but also with some very specific social and cultural aspects associated with them to build trust, to build understanding, and to build the dynamic nature of the diaspora going forward. If you may, I'll move on to something else, another type of way of building connections, which again you mentioned, which is about creating programs. Programs was mentioned a number of times, as well as mentorship, etc. So creating targeted programs, we identified 3 here of mentorship initiatives, investment platforms, and export readiness programs. We decided to specifically mention investment platforms and investment readiness programs because they're often some very key things which take investment to set up, but which do help to build connections and communications in the diaspora. And we've given you there's an example of each, so that you can see how it's been done. So overall, creating programs, but mentorship, investment platforms, and export readiness programs. Let's have examples of those one by one. So in Angola, we tried to find a specific example from a specific region of Angola for this. There's an accelerator program in the Huila province, presented by STEMI Makers of Africa in partnership with the US Embassy, and in this case focused on women entrepreneurs, and that's 6 weeks of hybrid mentorship type activities, and mentorship, training, business consulting clinics. Actually has a grant element as well. But the idea is through the diaspora this was identified, and there was the need or opportunity here was identified for a specific type of entrepreneurs in the whole diaspora, from a specific region, and a specific, in this case specifically women entrepreneurs. But then a 6-week program was implemented, which focus around mentorship, and of course provides training and consulting, and indeed, as I said, indeed grants here as well. Again, we've given you the link to see how that's shown. Going on to investment programs, investment platforms. We actually showed you previously, you might remember right at the start, the Home Springs platform that can be created that could be seen as an investment platform as well. Here we've highlighted something from Kenya. The Diaspora Investment Club, which is an initiative, it's a little older now, but from the Kenya Diaspora Alliance, together with Kenyan professionals in the diaspora and worldwide. So the idea is provides an element, a platform that diaspora members can engage in investments, within Kenya. So it's an idea of creating a platform which highlights possible investments and can drive those investments from the diaspora organizations into the in this case Kenya. And we provided the again the link there. There are many more links and many more types of investment platforms, but we thought this one might be of interest, might be of specific interest. And then looking at export readiness programs, here we looked at one which is more general over southern Africa. It's one which is funded through US aid as well. So again, it's an investment. As this is multinational, it has an investment. It's a development agency included as well. It's in Angola, but you can see the countries at the end, looking at, in this case, 100 SMEs in 9 southern African countries. And the idea is to increase export readiness. So it's a platform that provides information, consultancy activities, or was a platform that can help those SMEs and SMEs who want and other SMEs, other small companies, to access and to try to increase export readiness. So it's what we thought would be a nice example of an export readiness program, which is being run effectively through a diaspora network. Okay. The last overall heading we've got, which is related to what we were talking, the last word cloud in terms of possible ways to actions to build connections. The last one we put in was leverage technology and communication for storytelling. Again, it's a focus on storytelling. So building a digital platform, using social media like LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and also identified there a number of times in the word cloud was newsletters, and of course providing regular newsletters as well, featuring startup highlights and opportunities. Let me go through a couple of examples on 2 of those bullet points. So building a digital platform to diaspora engagements. I don't know if people are aware of the Bantaba portal. We've given you the link, here, and actually at the end we have more information. So it's a platform that connects African tech startups with professionals and investors in the African community abroad. So it's based on a diaspora. And you can see from there, it's very technologically based, and creating these links about knowledge, capital, and network. So you can create an account, you can log in, you can see who else is using it. If you go to the website, you'll see all the case studies and the examples of and the success stories as well. It's a good example of how a startup diaspora community can be developed through a digital platform. And of course, what we're talking about here is not necessarily creating new digital platforms. We're providing these as well because incubators can access those platforms, those digital platforms that already exist, with the idea of using those to create new diaspora or new connections as well. One doesn't have to always go about creating new digital platforms when there are so many, when there are a number already available which function very well. If you notice, I didn't show anything about LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter because I think everyone knows and how to use that. So I didn't put any examples of that. For newsletters, if you don't mind, I'm going back to a BIC Africa example for newsletters. BIC Africa provides regular newsletters, and I'm sure Robert and Christina will afterwards can tell you how effective they have been, but also how to put them together, of course, as well. I'm sure many of you are involved in developing newsletters. Of course, one has to make them regular. Of course, one has to make them interesting, and and so there is a skill involved in skill and experience involved in that. I show the last one from BIC Africa from December 2024. So some of you might have been at the annual gathering, or at least know about it, which was focusing on accelerating access for sustainable financing for young businesses in Africa. But of course, we can put more diaspora focused aspects into these newsletters as well. Okay, so moving on, I don't know if anyone, sorry, Christina, perhaps I could comment, because I know you've got your camera. Is there anything ever which you might think is relevant from your question concerning concrete methods to build connections and communicate from your question?
Yes, Douglas, sorry. No, I think you covered that quite well. My question was basically just, when you were giving more the example about the government's perspective, I was just wondering how you could sort of twist that to put it from an incubator manager's perspective. I think you've covered that. Thank you.
Thanks, Christine. Thanks. Excellent. So any more questions, please do put it in the chat. We're now moving, to make sure, of course, we're going to, as I say, finish on time. We wanted to have just a shorter period talking about sustainable partnerships. Firstly, about structuring of agreements. And then if you remember the agenda, even more examples of platforms and other resources. So we've got two subparts to go. The first one is structuring of agreements. And the second one is more a resource about platforms and other resources, so that you've got all of these things and more, which we've discussed, and we can go through them one by one, of course, if there's time and if you have interest. So in terms of structuring of agreements, and I hope you don't mind, I'm going to ask another question. What I mean is structuring agreements between organizations within the diaspora. So maybe it's between an incubator and another, one other organization, perhaps in Germany or whatever, or maybe it's between groups of, between groups of organizations. But as we move on from, if you remember the pyramid, as we move on from networking and sort of training type activities and capacity building and mentoring into some, for instance, quite specific ideas of partnerships and medium and long-term partnerships, agreements are quite often useful to help on that. If you don't mind, what I would really like to do is have a question of what kind of elements you think should be included in these types of agreements. For instance, a MOU, a memorandum of understanding, between business incubators and diaspora organizations. What are the key aspects that an agreement, a partnership agreements should include? We put the link into the chat, and also maybe perhaps I could ask Barbara to show her screen.
Sure. Here's the screen.
Scope of agreement, responsibilities, absolutely. I think that's two key aspects. Thank you. Yeah, I'd say absolutely two key. I think we have one or two people still typing. Roles and responsibility, resource allocation. Yes, resources are always a key aspect of this. Deadlines, absolutely. Timelines, yes. Clear goals, yep, yeah, absolutely. The scope and the goals and the objectives, KPIs, yeah. How do you measure what's being done? Absolutely, fantastic. The nature of the collaboration, yes, I agree with that. That's what's the overall objective? What's the scope? Confidentiality aspects. That's very important, and which I've missed out from the next slides. Financial elements, yes. Clear goals, responsibilities, protection of ideas and innovations. Yes, IPR, absolutely. Thank you for that. I think that's very important. Timeline, financial elements, goals, scope, nature. I think, yes, deadlines. I think that's great. Thank you so much. I think that's really very relevant. So let me. Oh no, we've got one more person typing. So I'll one or two more people typing. So let me go further. Feedback loop. Yes, absolutely. I think I don't know if anything else came up there. I think that's what we have. So if that's okay, what I'll do then is I'll go back to my screen. Thank you again for that. So let's go through some of the things which we identified. And we'll go through these in more detail as we go through, but I want to see if we're thinking alike here. So overall, structured agreements, such as MOUs and memorandums of understanding, can define roles, responsibilities, expectations, and be aimed to ensure success of the partnership. I think in obviously the title, but the 5 next points, we sort of cover many of the things which you looked at, and as I said, we'll look at these in more detail as we go through. So objectives to outline the goals, roles and responsibilities, financial terms, legal terms, and monitoring and evaluation. I think actually these cover what you've said. Again, if it's something which, as we go through, which you don't think we've covered, just put it in the chat, and we'll make sure that we update the information and discuss that as well. I may go through them one by one. I won't go through the title. This is how we set out the rest of the slides on this subsection. I hope it's understandable that you can see. So in bold is the objective. So we're looking at objectives, outline the goals of the collaboration. I've got here the key questions. What are the goals of the partnership? E.g. mentorship, funding, networking, export readiness, to identify more specifically the goals and the roles, what roles will the Diaspora organization play, although that's probably more in the next part. And then the scope of agreements. There was mentioned a number of times the scope of the agreements. So defining the activities of the Diaspora organization support. So mentorship programs. Is it mentorship programs? Is it financial investments? Is it fundraising campaigns? Is it knowledge sharing workshops? Is it training sessions? Is it access to international market assistance? It's very important here to outline that scope as you correctly identified in the word cloud, so that everyone has the correct expectations. At this stage, we're quite at a high level, and obviously we get more and more detailed as we go through the roles and responsibilities, financial terms, etc. But I think we covered most of what's in the. I think we covered most of what's in the word cloud in regard to setting up the nature of the collaboration. But I like the words that you used, nature of the collaboration, and I think that was that was a nice phrase which I think should be included here. What's the overall scope and nature and scope of the agreement? I think is a good heading to have. Okay. Moving on to roles and responsibilities then. Again, here I put defining specific tasks for for each party. Look, in this example, it's very much between a business incubator and a diaspora organization. But of course, this can be expanded to different types of organizations as well. But we wanted to use a specific type of example for this. So in terms of roles and responsibilities, the thing is clarity is required about these. So in the business incubator, they could be, for instance, these are examples, providing a platform for diaspora engagement, a portal, events, training, etc. Facilitating communication between the diaspora members and startups. And I think the last bullet point here is very important, that it's got to be someone's responsibility to ensure proper reporting and transparency on the use of the Diasporas contributions. It's so important to make sure that everyone understands what's going on. Both previously, we were just talking about the scope in terms of what's going on in terms of what is included and what's not included, but also to report what's being done and being transparent in that, to build trust, to build understanding, and to build the dynamic nature of the diaspora. I think this is a very important element, and I'm glad that many people identified that. In terms of the Diasporas organization responsibilities, we've given some examples here: to mobilize diaspora members to participate, to offer technical expertise, funding or market linkages, to share updates and progress reports on those engagement activities. I mean, these are examples. In some MOUs or some partnership agreements might be, I don't know if this is the right terminology, but might be a little more vague than that, so that allows, especially as the partnership gets renewed, allows more variety in the activities, and some might be very targeted and tight, especially at the start, to make sure.
Douglas, we just lost your audio, Douglas. You might be on mute.
Okay, am I unmuted now?
That's great, thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks. I wonder what happened there. Excellent. Anyway, so I think you asked me for a second, so I'll just repeat the last one of some last point. But what one can find with all types of partnership agreements is that of course they can be modified as they go on. They can start tighter and more restricted, so that people know exactly what the scope and the responsibilities and the activities are. And then as trust is built up, they can be expanded to allow for more variety and understanding. To go on to financial terms, there was a number of points mentioned about that. It's important that the partnership agreement specifies any funding commitments, how revenue sharing models are identified. For instance, in funding model, where any diaspora organization provide grants, donations, is it equity and debt investments? Is there any operational funding involved in these agreements? It's really very important to identify the model, and also the amounts, the maximum amounts, of course, as well. And in many of these activities, of course, revenues can be created. It's not necessarily the primary objective, but if revenues are generated, e.g. from investments, how will they be shared? I very much like the point that someone mentioned of being clear on the ROA, the return on investments. This is partly identified here in being clear on how revenue is generated, for instance, from investments, for the return on investments, how they will be shared. And you need clarity and to some extent, maybe equity is the wrong word, but they need to be done so that the incentives are correct. Okay, moving on to legal terms. Again, there were some very nice comments before about how was it put, about ensuring that knowledge of the rights to investments, the rights to creations and research and innovation. That's right, rights to innovation were identified. I think that can come in here to clarify ownership of any intellectual property. Now here I've put training materials and tools, etc. But of course, I think the point which was made in the word cloud, but that also includes on any innovations that are developed via the diaspora. Of course, the IPR needs to be identified, and needs to be the understanding of where that goes under the partnership. It has to be clear under the partnership. Or if that's not clear, then if it's not possible to be clear at the stage at the point of the partnership agreement, then at least there's a process through which it would be done. Deadlines was mentioned, deadlines and timelines was mentioned as well, and that's here as well. Start and end dates with provisions for renewal. Obviously, one wants these partnership agreements to become more and more important as they get renewed. And also, one has to understand that, of course, the conditions and methods of if a partnership, sometimes partnerships don't function in the way that they're in the maximum way that people wanted them. So conditions under which agreements can be terminated, of course, is relevant as well, and should in this model can be included in this legal terms. It's about clarity to build trust and understanding. Okay, and the last point we've got on here is the monitoring and evaluation. So how progress will be measured. A number of those points was mentioned. So KPIs were identified in the work crowd. The feedback mechanism was identified very clearly as well. So you know, we're obviously really thinking along the same lines here. So in terms of impact metrics, KPIs to measure the success of the partnership. Some examples that here are given. Of course, they're dependent on what the partnership agreement is trying to achieve. Here we've got a number of startups supported, amount of investment mobilized, measures on market access. Of course, they're quite specific. And often at the start of the partnership agreements, it can be a little bit more inputs based. So number of webinars, number of boot camps, number of capacity building tools defined, number of one-to-one meetings, and amount of number of mentorships implemented. Of course, we can have a more input based rather than output based type of matrix there, depending on the type of partnership agreement and depending on where you are within the partnership. And then feedback mechanism, very, very important, was mentioned, of course, yes, to highlight that. But not only does the partnership have to be monitored and evaluated and lessons learned, and of course also what's important, but channels for startup, but there's a feedback mechanism, but that feedback is transparent, it's clear, so it's transparent and it's known where it is. So specific channels for startup and other members to provide feedback, and for those to understand what the feedback is of both from the KPIs, the impact metrics, and any sort of more qualitative type feedback as well. There needs to be feedback mechanisms to ensure that as well. So that's how we structure this partnership agreement. I think we've covered all the things you thought potentially might be relevant. Again, if not, then please do put that into the chat. Now, it's quite difficult to provide examples. We've got one or two examples which in the next slides, but of course, many of these agreements are confidential. Oh, my apologies. This is the word of confidentiality. Someone mentioned it as being it was mentioned as being very important. So I'll go back 2 slides. My apologies, I forgot. I would include confidentiality under this legal terms here. We should have made a clear point of it in the bullets. So that's the confidentiality aspects as well as the intellectual property aspects, of course, are relevant. Yeah. So many of these agreements, it's quite hard to get hold of examples. Of course, if you have examples and are willing to share with the group, we would be very happy indeed to receive them and add them to the materials. We've given a couple of examples which you may find interesting. The first one is the Ghana Digital Centre Limited with the Diaspora African Forum. So there's 2 entities involved. The Ghana Digital Centre Limited, which is a government agency under Ghana's Ministry of Communications and Digitalisation. This is a few years old now, this agreement. This is focusing on developing technology parks and digital centres, so ICT growth. And then the Diaspora African Forum, DAF, which is a non-governmental organisation. It's an NGO creating an advocacy on diasporas overall, so not just specific about business or incubators. And so and then showing some aspects of the agreement details. It had the purpose, which of course covers the scope, etc. It had the key components, covering the roles and responsibilities as well, and the significance of what how the partnership agreement would lead to activities that would create a specific and actual and a measurable impact. I don't have access to all the agreements, so we don't know how the KPIs were and the IPR were dealt with in it. But what we've done is this is from a couple of years ago now. We just showed you some. It's quite a long news article on it, and then also giving you directly to the Diaspora African Forum website as well, which can provide more information about DAF in more in general. Then we have one more example, but again, it's hard to get the specific partnership agreement to show. But this is about the African Agribusiness Incubation Network and the organisation called the Alliance of Biodiversity International, the International Centre for Tropical Agriculture. So they signed an MOU again a couple of years back, involved in collaborating on initiatives to support smallholder farmers and entrepreneurs. So the partnership agreement there sort of focus on transforming subsistence farming into competitive businesses. Sorry. So there was the partnership agreement focused on mentoring, as far as we understand, mentoring, capacity strengthening, resource mobilization, and information sharing. So it showed to a certain extent what the scope and the activities and the roles and responsibilities are. The link I gave you there is not to the agreement itself. It's to a news article. The agreement itself is not possible actually to get to. But what we wanted to do there is just to show a couple of examples where these partnership agreements are actually being implemented, even if we don't have access to the specific agreement and of which the structure we've been discussing. Excellent. So thank you so much. I'm aware that we're moving on in time, but this is the last part of part C, which is the last overall part. Last subpart being just access to platforms and other resources. Okay, and then I'm just wondering what to do here, given the time. If it's okay, what I'll do is I'll move beyond the question. What I've got is a series of slides and links to some platforms which which we've mentioned before, but others which we haven't. And I think that might be which might be relevant for you. And then of course we may ask questions. Is there any other platforms you can put in the chat instead of doing it via at the moment, instead of doing it via Slido? If you have any platforms, sorry, what's going on in the chat? Okay, would you also? Okay, that's good. Maybe before going to here, let me answer that question, Christina. Would you also suggest making bilateral agreements with individual Diaspora members rather than organizations and networks? Yes, of course. I think that's the idea of what we were showing. Of course, can be changed for different types of organizations and in different environments with different scopes. So if, for instance, the incubator wanted to make a specific bilateral business incubator wanted to make a specific bilateral agreement with one specific member, they can do that, of course. Obviously, sometimes that is more done without a specific agreement, more done with an understanding, depending on the type of activity indicated. But if to make it a simple agreement, especially which includes scope and timeline and responsibilities, I think that could be a very good idea. So that everyone understands and everyone has knowledge about what is expected from the two parties in that bilateral agreement. So I would say that's a simplified agreements between bilateral organizations. Of course, can always be a good focus to help develop that specific aspect of the diaspora. Hopefully I've answered that. Hopefully I've answered that question. If not, then please.
Yeah, thank you, Doc. It was just yeah, maybe that also clarifies it for some of the participants. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So then to go on to certain examples, as I started saying in the chat, if you have other platforms, or this is examples of platforms and other resources you can use as incubators or other organizations. to further your interest and to perhaps develop your diasporas, diaspora networks. If there are others that you think are relevant, then please just tell us, either in the chat or afterwards, and of course we can add them. The first one is actually one which we showed before, which is the Bentaba. We showed that before, but I wanted to highlight it again and show a little bit more information. But it is relatively recent. It's relatively recently developed in 2021. It's very modern. It's a digital matchmaking platform. It's very interesting, and they claim to help very many startups. And the map at the bottom right hand side of the page obviously can show this. So you can create an account and you can enter, and you can really, as an incubator or as a startup or as any other type of organization, you can show and gain from this matchmaking operation. And it's an interesting one to look at. Then we have the Bridge for Africa hub, which is shown on this slide. So it's a platform for entrepreneurs between Africa and Europe. So it's trying to match entrepreneur to entrepreneur. It's an online information and guidance platform, as I said, for entrepreneurs, aiming to develop joint ventures between Africa and Europe. So this is not country specific. It has a nice identification and selection system, which you can see in the drop-down menus if you go there. So the idea is to foster Euro-African communities dedicated to entrepreneurship. And they have a nice action plan of 11 actions where you can jump in and out to try to make projects as a success, and where they can, where this particular platform can assist. So again, it's an interesting platform, I think, to include for those who are French speakers. I think there's at least a French version. I'm not convinced. I don't know if there's a Portuguese version, but there's certainly a French version as well. And then we wanted to show an example of a platform from a consulting type activity. This is Afro Diaspora Consulting, which is identifying to connecting Africa to its diaspora. We've shown you the link there. So this can provide consultancy advice, but also information and other aspects. So it's a platform that serves to activate consulting and support for diaspora members interested in investing and starting business in their home country. So you can see how it's almost coming from, for instance, a European and US perspective to identify what investment opportunities would be within the home countries. So it provides but it also provides incubator support, business planning support, marketing assistance, and then through their consulting operation, access to venture capital and angel investors as well. So another slightly different way of doing it, but another interesting platform, I think, which is useful to look at. Home strings we mentioned before, but I identified that we wanted to speak about it a little bit more because I think it's relevant. So it's been going since 2012. I mentioned, but it's one of the oldest of these types of platforms. And it started as a crowdfunding platform, but has expanded out to a specific investment projects as well. It has an investment conference series, which you can see there, which we to provide information and understanding to diaspora, depending on the certain countries and regions of Africa. This is one of the ones which is, of course, is not focused on a specific region or country in Africa. And so it's one in which business incubators from various countries can contact to see if there's an opportunity to develop an investment conference, for instance, in Kenya or Ethiopia or in whichever country the participants are from. It's an interesting platform and an interesting organization to work with. Just in the final few minutes, another example is Redo. This is implemented by GIZ. It's countries. You can see the countries are focused are some which are present today: Ethiopia, Ghana, Cameroon, Kenya, Togo, and Tunisia. This is a free of charge platform. So there's no consultancy, there's no paid aspects of this. So it's a perhaps different to one or two of the previous types of platforms as well, which have different types of free and paid models. And as I said, it's one which is supported by GIZ from Germany. If you have a look on the screenshot we gave you, there's a specific Green Ghana local call, so you can see how it can also be used to show what investments, what grants are available. Also, if you can see some of the how WIDO works parts, it shows how it grants, local calls, investments, but also some coaching and other types of information that is available. I didn't put it in, but it has also success stories, which can be used as a motivation for the types of platforms you're going to be using, or for your diaspora activities. Just going on to one or two more. Excuse me if I cough for a second. The African Diaspora Policy Center, I think I mentioned this one before as well. So this is more of a policy center to develop policies and provide advice at at a higher level. It was very interesting. One of the reasons I mentioned it is of course they were related to one of the reports the diaspora engagement model, which is related to one of reports which we showed previously, which is based on good practices that have been successful in the past. So whilst perhaps it's more focused on say policy and program level, it is also very interesting to go and visit to see what they recommend to be done at the government and at the regional level, and how that can be targeted down to the incubator and other organization level. Moving on to other platforms, the African Diaspora Network, they have a series of different key programs which are of interest. Also on the screen we put that they have they've just had actually a year review, but they have a number of webinars. So there's a number of activities and reports and information that can be used. It's a network which you might some of you may already be a member of, but they have plans for 2025. So it's quite an active over the last 15 years or so. It's been quite an active collaboration, and they have very specific. You might see at the bottom. They've made sometimes quite specific interactions with organisations and regions and countries outside of Africa. In this case, Silicon Valley is identified. But if you look on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see. And if and when you go there, you'll see that the various different forums, people mention forums, very different forums that are used, which can be used either as which can either use the forum themselves, but of course it all for your incubators and for your organizations and your diasporas, or you can take ideas of how they're structured into designing something specifically for your country. Great. I think the last overall platform I wanted to show you is this is actually a little older, so I did leave it to the end, but it's quite nice. It's a social media platform, and as I said, it's getting it's not so up to date this particular one, but I wanted to include it anyway. So a social media platform to create international diasporas to one another. The idea is purely networking. It's mainly networking, I would say. One of the reasons I wanted to include it is that it has if you look at the bottom right-hand side of the screen, it has quite a nice search engine, so you can see different types of organizations and different types of organizations that they have in their database, and a search mechanism to go there via the type of business, the type of country in Africa, and the country in Europe, or in Europe for instances as well. So it's quite an interesting one of if you're wanting to get in contact with other types of diaspora organizations in different countries, then it has quite an interesting database. Lastly, I just some examples, some of which we've shown here, some of which we've had before. I just put these here as examples of reports, etc. Some of them are modern, but some of them go back a couple of years, of which might be of interest to you. The links are there for them all. As I said, if you have any more which you think are relevant, then please do contact us, because of course we'll be very happy to understand, to look and to increase. Okay, I think we've come to the end of our allotted time, Christina. It's 10 to the hour, so we have just 5-10 minutes to wrap up. Before you do, if I may just have a few words. So the idea of today's session was to provide an introduction and guidelines to mobilizing Diaspora, international experience, try to provide as many links and as many resources as possible within the sort of the 2.5 hours of active time that we have. Thank you so much for your participation. I really like the way that you are that everyone was getting together and answering those Slido word clouds. I really enjoyed how they fit into the into what we were thinking when we were developing the course. And I'm really glad that it many of the things which you said we were able to discuss in further details afterwards. So thank you so much for your participation. I really appreciate it. And yes, from my side, thank you to Barbara as well for doing all the technical aspects, which and setting everything up. Thank you so much, Barbara.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Barbara. Thank you to the participants, and also thank you to BIC Africa. Thank you to Christina Darwich, who's not here today, and Robert. So thank you so much, and maybe over to you, Christina. Of course, we have time to discuss. We're open to any other questions. Of course, we are. Any questions, we would love to take them.
Thank you, Douglas. Thank you so much for the amazing session. I think it was really, really useful. So thanks for delivering this great session, and thank you, Barbara, as well for supporting and being here today. Thanks to all our participants, as Douglas said, for being active and engaging in the Slidos. We really hope that this session was useful for you. I'm gonna pop in the chat as well the dates for our next 2 sessions, which will be next Thursday on financial modeling, and then there will be another session on the 22nd on agribusiness and partnership development. But yeah, thanks again for being here. Maybe Robert, any final word?
No, just to repeat, thanks again for joining us in the busy days of the new year 2025, and wishing you all a great start to the new year, and great to see some old friends who joined us today. And please look out for the other opportunities coming up on the BIC Africa website, on LinkedIn and everything. And we hope to see you also at some of the physical events going forward during this year. So yeah, let's keep connecting, and looking forward to exchanging with you more in the coming weeks and months.
Thank you. So unless there's any other points which people would like to make, of course, we're open to any questions, but I assume not. If not, then I guess we close. Excellent. On time. Fantastic. Thank you so much to everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thanks
so much.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye now. Thank you.